Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I am Jeanette McCulloch. I'm the Marketing Director here at Lactation Education Resources, and I'm so glad that you are all here with us today.
Hello, I second that. I am Sekeita Lewis-Johnson. I am the Accredited Provider Program Director, and welcome into the space today where we start to dive into real talk.
So it's so wonderful to see everyone joining us today. I'll give you a little bit of background about me first. I am an IBCLC and I work on the marketing side of LER and am deeply passionate about lactation education and about supporting healthcare professionals on your journey to becoming an IBCLC. So I work closely with our team to make sure that you have all the resources, all the information, all the support that you need throughout your certification journey. And how about you, Sekeita?
So yeah, I work on the accreditation side. So whether it's nursing contact hours or CERPs, I work to make sure that we are all in alignment. I also still work as an IBCLC. I'm still currently practicing. I've had experience working in the hospital as well as community settings. And so, yeah, I'm just here to impart. I've been an IBCLC for about 17 years, and I've had to take the exam twice. So kudos to you. If you're going to be taking it for the first time, you won't have to ever take it again like I did. So anyways, so I'm just here to share from my lived experience as well as some of the professional standards that we have that governs who we are as IBCLCs. So welcome and thank you for joining us.
Oh, well, thank you, Sekeita. And great. So we're going to get started here, and we have just a little bit of housekeeping. If you take a look at the GoToWebinar interface, you'll see where the blue arrow is pointing, and this box that says questions, this is a way for you to ask questions as well as to, of course, just chat with us today. So you can go ahead and give it a try. If you're on your computer today, go ahead and type where in the world you're listening to us today. We always love to hear where we're reaching, and it's also just a really nice way to get started. And on the next slide, you'll see the green arrow. If you're participating today on a mobile device, take a look at where the green arrow is pointing, and then you can find the question box there. Thank you, Sekeita. And additionally, we have a few other folks joining us today. We have Julie, who is from our truly amazing customer support team. Julie is an IBCLC and can answer any questions that you have about your journey to becoming a lactation consultant. She'll also flag a few questions here or there for me and Sekeita, and we'll be able to answer them live so everybody else can hear that information as well. And also joining us today is Jill, who is an amazing member of our tech team. And Jill can support us if you're having any sorts of challenges with technology today. She's here to support us, but also you as well. Okay, great. So go ahead and ask any questions that you'd like in the chat. Go ahead, test it out, and we'd love to hear from you. Oh, wonderful. It's so nice to see folks rolling in. So now let's dive in and take a closer look at what a lactation consultant is and how you can follow your passion and become an IBCLC. So if you decide to become an IBCLC, you will join more than 35,000 IBCLCs in over 131 countries and territories around the globe. Credentialing as a lactation consultant is offered by the International Board of Lactation Consultant Examiners. Oh, sorry, that has changed. The International Board of Lactation Consultant Examiners Commission. So not the examiners, but the commission. So you can take a look at their website. They have different regional offices. So depending on where in the world you reside or you work, you can find the regional office that would support you. There you'll find the requirements and the pathways that are necessary to become eligible to take the IBCLC exam. So when you go to sit for that exam, what is it that you need to know? You need to, there's something called the detailed content outline, also known as the exam blueprint. What they do is they survey IBCLCs in various practice settings around the globe and find out what is the essential knowledge that you need to have. And then they put that all together into an outline. And that outline covers all the topics and all the chronological stages of human development that you need to know in the scope of your work as an IBCLC. And what our courses do is cover that entire detailed content outline. Our courses are also approved by an organization called LARC. That stands for the Lactation Education Accreditation and Approval Review Committee. So our courses are both LARC accredited as well, or rather LARC recognized as well as LARC approved. And our courses are comprehensive to cover that entire outline. And we're going to get a little bit more into what our courses are like and what that looks like a little bit later on today. But right now, I'm going to turn it over to Sekeita because she's got some important questions that as you are thinking about becoming an IBCLC, as becoming a lactation consultant, what kind of questions do you need to ask yourself? Sekeita?
Thank you so much, Jeanette. So before we dive into today, we're going to start to talk about a lot of things, but it's very important that you think about these questions and keep these 2 questions on this slide at the forefront of your mind. It might be helpful to write them down. So the first question is do I have the skills necessary to become an IBCLC? And we're going to talk about those skills today. We're going to talk about the skills in an essence of all the skills that you need. Sometimes, you know, when we say skills, people automatically think about the task-oriented, hands-on, digging deep down in the trenches. Yeah, that too. And there's a lot more. So today we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about many other skills, right? So we're not going to talk about all the hands-on, but we are going to talk about the things that are important to our role as lactation clinicians. And so you also want to ask yourself, so hey, if I don't have these skills, where will I get the skills, right? So after today, try to process these questions so that you can develop a plan that to get the skills that are necessary for your success. And hopefully we're going to help you make some sense of it, but don't worry if it doesn't make sense today. Sometimes people need to hear this a couple times, so just know that this session will be recorded. All right, so let's dig in. So before I talk about competency, I want to know if you would ever go to a brain surgeon to do a heart surgery for you. Probably not, right? Doesn't make sense because, you know, the brain surgeon is not competent in doing surgery on the heart. So what makes an IBCLC? Just keep that in mind. Competency is so critical. It means that you have the ability, the knowledge, the skills, and the attitude to complete a task or function and to do it successfully. In any new profession, there's always going to be a growth track from novice to expert. And novice simply means that you have foundational knowledge and some skills, but you probably haven't been there, done that, you know, and I haven't, and I've been in this field for 17 years. But to say that you're an expert, it means that you have some practice under your belt, right? So when you first start off as a IBCLC, what you want to make sure that you're most comfortable with at the end of your training, you want to make sure that you are confident, that you are competent in your foundational knowledge and skill set. And this is to decrease the risk of harm to families. You also want to make sure that you deliver culturally appropriate and credible care. So let's unpack what culturally appropriate means. If you've worked in any healthcare or been around anyone, or even in business sectors, you might have heard the word culturally competent. Well, culturally appropriate is another word that can be arguably more fitting for the care we want to provide. And being culturally appropriate starts with cultural humility. And cultural humility is really a lifelong process of self-reflection. And we are self-critiquing ourselves, where we are not only learning about someone else's culture, but we start with examining our own beliefs and our own cultural identities. And again, it's a lifelong process. It really is a process of relearning things that we were previously taught to think and believe about other people and other cultures. So for example, I've heard some of my colleagues say things like, it's not in their culture to do X, Y, and Z. You know, that's really not a culturally appropriate statement. And these are the types of statements that we should avoid and that we should also challenge our colleagues to avoid. So the first part of cultural humility is not feeding into stereotypes, not making assumptions about what someone will or won't do based on their culture, because you really don't know unless they've told you, hey, this is not a part of my culture, because you know there are subcultures within cultures, right? These cheeses make credibility. Are you a credible resource? When you're asked a question and you don't know the answer, how do you respond? Do you typically try to answer off of a whim or off your own lived experience? And I'm asking this question because almost everyone, when we're talking about breastfeeding or chest feeding, almost everyone want to tell you their story. Their story, oh, it didn't hurt me, or it hurt really bad, or this is what happened with me, right? And we can all reflect on our own personal experiences. But as clinicians, you really should be relying on the evidence. So being a credible resource means that you are giving out information that A, coincides with the best evidence, and B, that you really know what you're talking about. So then the next question becomes, do you know what the evidence says? If you don't, do you know where to find it, right? We're not all walking dictionaries or computers, and it's impossible to know everything. Demonstrating credibility is about being forthcoming. It's about saying, I'm not quite sure about that. Let me get back to you. Then check out the resources and get back to your client or your patient in a timely manner. For our profession, which is a fairly new profession, credibility is everything. If you lose credibility as a lactation consultant, it could translate to other lactation consultants losing credibility. So we also, as IBCLCs, we advise on policies and we help create policies. Remember I said, do you have the necessary skills? Well, some of you in this space may already have policy as a strong suit, right? And I'm like, okay, yes, we need you, right? Because if you work in policy, then you know this skill set is very important because the language in policies matter. Poorly written policies can end up with unintended negative consequences that harm the public. So if you are a policy person and that's your thing, you already have that piece of it, right? However, there's other ways of being when we talk about the policy rim. So being a stakeholder is another form of policy work, and all IBCLCs are stakeholders. So we should be at the table whenever there are lactation specific or related policies. So maybe policy is not your strong suit, but as an IBCLC, trust me, you want to know how policies are created and how they impact us, because then that informs your advocacy. And advocacy is a big, big part of what we do and who we are. An advocate is simply a person who publicly supports or recommends a particular cause or policy. So even if you're not a policy advisor, you can be the person at the table listening to how policies are created and sharing your lived experience and your perspective. Being a problem solver and a researcher. Problem solving is about 90% of what we do because each family have their own sets of concerns. And really, when lactation consultants are called for support, it is usually in request to some type of problem or issue that the family may be having with breastfeeding, chest feeding, or lactation. So be mindful about framing lactation concerns from a one-size-fits-all framework. Just know that one size never fits all. And we should be problem solving from really the individual lens of that particular family and the concerns that they're sharing with you. Along with being a problem solver, remember I said, sometimes you have to go back and say, I don't know this, and you have to look it up. Well, there's two ways to be a researcher, right? You can be a person who does academic research or scientific research, or you can be that person whose job involves discovering and verifying information. And that is all of us. Let's remember I said we're not walking around with everything in our head, and we must have valid and reliable tools that inform our practice. High-level lactation scare. I was going to combine that with skills. So let me start over. High-level lactation care, skilled high-level lactation care. How about that? They both go hand in hand. When I talk about high-level lactation care, I am speaking in reference to Rebecca Mano's lactation acuity framework. So in this framework, basic breastfeeding care is level 1, and that is being able to assist with latch and positioning when the infant and the parent are both well, there's no risk factors for premature weaning, and there are no other issues other than I just need a little bit of assistance, versus high-level lactation care, which would qualify as a level 3, looks very different. So I want you to imagine this. Imagine someone who's in an ICU who was lactating prior to going into the intensive care unit, and they are now intubated and on life support. Are you able to deliver the type of care that is needed for this individual? Are you able to look at their medications? Are you able to say, whoa, okay, this person has a brain injury. What must I know about the brain? How does that brain injury impact lactation? Are you able to make those connections? So right now you might not be able to, right? Because I just gave you what high-level lactation skill care is. But when you're doing your training, sometimes you have to really think about, some people are like, why do I need to know about the brain? You need to know about the brain because it really is the level of care that sets IBCLCs apart. Being able to handle complex clinical cases with sound clinical decision-making and recommendations that are appropriate for higher acuity levels of care. So when we talk about acuity, it is simply the level of care necessary for optimal outcomes. So thinking about this, you want to think, do I have the skills necessary? And I'm going to tell you right off again, I gave you the worst of the worst, right? But once you build your skills, your foundational knowledge, you want to continue to build your skills. You want to continue to build your knowledge set. And your skills will develop into expert mode over time, and you will be able to deliver the type of skills care that is necessary for this level of care. Essential and timely. One of the things we found out during the pandemic was that essential became a buzzword. We found out also that lactation consultants are essential because babies still needed to eat, people were still having children, and particularly and especially during a pandemic, promoting and protecting the ability to provide human milk is critically important, not just from the bonding and the family, but also from the public health and prevention standpoint. So yes, we are essential, and it's important when we show that we show up and that we show up in a timely manner. It was very, strange because we didn't know what we were dealing with, but what we noticed was that some people did close their doors, but it's not really prudent to be like, we're in a pandemic now, so I don't know what you're going to do. No, you're on your own. Understand we are frontline workers. And so I just want to make it clear that telehealth, yes, provided lots of support during that time, but also telehealth sometimes can cause us to miss certain things. Telehealth prohibits the ability to use our other senses. I can recall a case during the pandemic and fresh in the pandemic where we didn't know what was going on, where a baby hadn't been seen by their pediatrician 1 week after life, and the parent had been calling for support and calling for support. This parent actually lived in a different city, about an hour away from me, and all she was offered was telehealth. And she said, I need in-home support. Well, it turns out I go to this person's house and the baby could not effectively feed from mom's breast because the baby couldn't even effectively feed from a bottle, right? So there were some tone issues with this baby. So me coming in as a lactation consultant and now advocate, because I had to basically contact the pediatrician and let them know what I was noticing and to say, hey, this baby needs to be seen ASAP. And then I had to teach other methods of feeding until the baby could be seen by the pediatrician. So that's what I mean about being timely. We are essential, and it's prudent in our duty to show up so that we minimize harms caused to families, that we are accessible, because really that's what being an IBCLC is all about. It's about providing accessible care at the time that it is most needed. Being a collaborative care partner and trusted is also important. And these are skill sets. Trust me, they are skill sets. But I love collaborative partner. I love this phrase so much because what it assumes that we are collaborating with our patients and our clients, that we are not the center of that decision making. We are not the decision maker. We are not the expert. We're collaborating to do what is best for them. Remember, it is the families and their partners' goals that takes precedence over any goals that we have for them. So what am I saying? I'm saying we all know the recommendations that exclusive breastfeeding for the first 6 months leads to optimal health outcomes, right? We know those things, right? And it's important that we still honor those and we still talk about them. However, if a parent has a different set of goals, it's important that we understand we are collaborating in partnership and in agreement, and that when they seek our care, that we make sure to approach it in a manner that we're not overstepping boundaries that are not meant for us to overstep. And that's how you become trusted. That's how you become trusted to do no harm, to be reliable, trusted to really say, I see you, and I see that we're in this together. I'm not higher than you. We're collaborating to do what is best for you. And that's how simply you become trusted. And you would think this is such a simple concept, but it doesn't always happen and translate into practice. And so that's why this skill is necessary to talk about. So when you go into certain clinical relationships and you assume a hierarchy, you assume, oh, I know all about this. I've been teaching this and doing this, teaching breastfeeding, chest feeding for 15 to 20 years. This is how it works. And you go on with your spiel and you don't ask them anything. You will lose trust. When you go in and touch someone without their permission, let's just say they wanted assistance with latch, and you just assume that they wanted you to come in and touch and move and start to do all these things, right? No, you need to ask before you touch, not assume. That's how you become trusted. That's how you become a collaborator. And then you're there as their collaborative person. So what have I been talking about? All of these topics. I've been talking about person-centered care. The Institute of Medicine defines patient-centered care as providing care that is respectful of and responsive to individual patients' preferences, needs, and values, and ensuring that patient values guide all clinical decisions. So I've talked about culture, I've talked about collaboration, I've talked about communication, I've talked about delivering care and the level of care. So if you want more information about this framework, you can visit the Institute of Medicine's website. However, what I will say to you is that there are certain words that do become buzzwords. Just like I said, the essential word became buzzword, right? Person-centered care also sometimes has become a buzzword, and people use it without really practicing it. remember, this is a model and this is what it looks like. And this is how you build trust. And this is how you not only build trust with your client, but you also build trust within your community and also with other clinicians that you work with. So I began with a few questions. I'm going to end with a few questions. And so these questions, it may also be helpful for you to write them down. I am a very reflective clinician, and that I do believe in journaling and writing, how I'm going to see my pathway through whenever I have a goal, right? Pathway. I just did a play on words there. So Jeanette is going to begin to talk about some of the pathways. And so what you want to write down is what pathway is best for you, right? You want to also think about the local market. What are your goals in working? Where do you plan to work? What does it look like in your area? And how does the training and how does the clinical hours, how does it fit with your lifestyle? Like, have you talked with your family about like, hey, I'm going to need these many clinical hours. I'm going to need to be away for some time, right? In addition to possibly a full-time job. All of these things you have to really, really think about. Also, if you're planning on going into private practice, what does that look like for real? If that is your ultimate goal, you want to start to think about all of these things, write them down, help them make sense, help yourself make sense of them before you begin this journey, so you have a better idea of your own pathway and what your journey will look like. With that, I am going to turn it over to Jeanette, and Jeanette will kick us off and get us going.
Oh, thank you so much, Sekeita. And these are all phenomenal, incredibly important questions to be asking. So, okay, so becoming an IBCLC, you're going to see on your screen here the steps that you're going to need. This is your roadmap to becoming the IBCLC. And I will say in advance, we get lots of questions about this. This is partly why it's so important for us to have phenomenal customer support people like Julie on our team, is because what pathway you take and how you travel across this roadmap can be different for different folks. And we're going to touch base on all of these different pieces today. So the first thing that you're going to do is here, you're going to choose a pathway. That's what you do first. And we're going to come back to that in just a minute. The next slide shows that you need education. We're going to talk about that. You need clinical hours, just like Sekeita was talking about. And then the last green circle here, this is your exam prep. Okay. So we're going to go back and talk a little bit about the education piece. The first thing that you need is the health sciences education, right? So if you're a healthcare provider, you probably have all these health sciences in place. You do have these health sciences in place. There are 8 post-secondary university level and 6 general education subjects that you need for health sciences. You can find the full list on the IBCLC, the IBCLC's Commission website. Then at LER, with the education for lactation specific education, we have 2 ways for you to get that content and for you to gather those hours. This includes the LCTP course, the core course, and the bridge course. Hold on just one second. My notes just disappeared. Sekeita, if you have access to the script, if you wouldn't mind shooting that my way in the chat, just so I make sure that I cover this properly at this point. And I will pull this up here in the chat. While I do that, Julie said that someone should address the question that she answered in the chat, which is, can I log my entire 12-hour shift for my clinical hours? And the answer to that is no. What you can do is do your best to keep track of what your keep track of during that 12-hour shift, what part of it was spent providing direct lactation care. That's the part of your hours that you can count. And it could be direct lactation care, it could be lactation education. It's anything that falls into lactation. It doesn't have to be mother-baby latching at that moment. It could be prenatal education, for example, but it does need to be lactation specific. Thank you, Sekeita, for helping to turn that up for me.
Yeah, so I'll just finish off if I could just offer up a little bit about what this slide is all about, particularly the 8 university level questions, right? There are 8 courses that are necessary if you do not have the health sciences background that Jeanette was talking about. There's biology, anatomy, physiology, infant and child growth and development, introduction to clinical research, nutrition, psychology or counseling skills or communication skills, and finally, sociology or cultural sensitivity. So they can be online or in person, as long as the institution is accredited to provide the learning. So if you took any of these courses during your college career, they count, even if it was 20 years ago. It's also important to know that LER partners with Walden University to provide the basic courses. Walden is online, and they have chosen the courses that best fit the commission's requirements. We are collaborating with Walden to provide our students with deep discounts for the college courses, and you can find the link to Walden on our website. Start with the training options banner listing, and then click on I want to be an IBCLC. Click on education, and you will find it there. The 6 general education subjects are medical documentation, medical terminology, occupational safety and security for health professionals, professional ethics for health professionals, universal safety precautions, and infection control and basic life support. 5 of the 6 general education courses can be taken through LER. The only one you will need to search for is basic life support. In many countries, there is an in-person skills check for this training. I have heard of some organizations providing this training completely online. Check your local resources. The guide provides general descriptions for typical courses in the subject area. Please keep in mind that the IBCLC is international. The names used in their document to describe the courses may not exactly fit the description of the course at your accredited education institution, and that's okay. You will also note broad terms with the understanding that there is no universal description for what a course is, let's just say in clinical research, right? Why are there 14 courses required? Because the IBCLC is a standalone credential, meaning you do not need another certification degree or license to practice as an IBCLC. Once you pass the exam, you will be an allied healthcare professional. The courses will help you to be prepared for your career as well as to help you pass the exam. Jeanette, are you all set?
Yes, I am happy to pick back up. So let's see here. Okay, so as Sekeita was just saying, it's incredibly important to check with IBCLC just to make sure that the courses that you are selecting do align. So once you pass the exam, you will become an allied healthcare professional. And these are the courses that are going to help you be prepared for your career, as well as to pass the IBCLC exam. So the second piece of education that you need is lactation-specific education. And this is one of the places where we've got you covered. So this education should be comprehensive, and as we discussed earlier, it's going to cover that detailed content outline. The Commission now requires at least 90 hours of lactation education, 5 hours of communication skills, and our 5-hour course is specific to lactation, or our 95-hour course is specific to lactation and breastfeeding care to help you in your practice as a lactation consultant. We also have a 2-hour course that is on the International Code of Marketing of Breast Milk Substitutes, which is also known as the WHO code, and that is essential to your the requirements of the Commission, and are also incredibly relevant to your work as an IBCLC. Now, the third component that you need is lactation-specific clinical experience. Now, this, as I was saying previously, this can include in-person consultations, it can be telephone consultations, it can be online or breastfeeding lactation care, as long as it is supporting breastfeeding families. And as I mentioned before, it also includes lactation assistance to pregnant and breastfeeding clients and lactation education to families or to professionals. So if you're educating your fellow professionals, that qualifies as well. These hours need to be obtained within the 5 years immediately prior to applying for the exam. So how many hours do you need? This is where we get into the pathways, right? This depends on your pathway. And so on this slide here, you can see that there are 3 pathways to becoming an IBCLC. Pathway 1 is for healthcare professionals and those who are a part of a recognized IBCLC breastfeeding support organization. Healthcare professionals, and this is as defined by IBCLC, not by us, are physicians, nurses, midwives, dietitians, physiotherapists, speech pathologists. There are others. Breastfeeding support counselors include those that are accredited through organizations like La Leche League International, the Australian Breastfeeding Association, those kinds of organizations. Now, for Pathway 2, they must complete a comprehensive academic program in human lactation and breastfeeding through an accredited university program, right? So this is like you're going to a 4-year college experience, or you're going through a college experience through an accredited university program. It's self-contained. It includes both your didactic education and your clinical components. That requires 300 clinically supervised hours with breastfeeding families. Then you have Pathway 3. Now, Pathway 3 is a structured mentorship program. So you develop a relationship between an IBCLC and an applicant, the IBCLC, or if there's more than one, all of them have to be in good standing with IBCLC, and those who choose this program have to be pre-approved prior to beginning your clinical hours. A quick note on thinking about what your hours are. For those of you who have lived experience as breastfeeding or chest feeding parents, or you provided human milk for your baby, those hours that you spent nursing, pumping, all the time that you spent helping your friends do the same, which says so many of us are called to this work because of supporting others. Sadly, those do not count towards the clinical hours that you need. Now, when we think about the number of hours, 500 or 1,000, depending on your pathway, that may seem like a lot, but there's a really good reason why each candidate needs to have the clinical experience they need so that they can provide competent care as an IBCLC. So again, with clinical hours, candidates who are applying through Pathway 1, you need 1,000 hours. So for the person who's a healthcare professional, those hours can be done in a hospital, a birth center, lactation clinic, or a private practice lactation setting, an independent private practice setting. Does not have to be in a healthcare setting. For breastfeeding support counselors from an IBCLC recognized organizations, those hours can be earned in person, they can be earned online. The location and the type of the support really depends on the criteria that's provided by that recognized organization, that league or the Australian Breastfeeding Association. Now, it's important to note that these hours do need to be counted on an hour-by-hour basis. So 2 important notes about the clinical hours. The first is you do need to document them as you accrue them. Be very detailed in case IBCLC chooses to audit your application for the exam. So when you go to sit for the exam, you'll turn in documentation of, or you'll prepare rather, documentation of different things, including your documentation of your hours. And so should that be audited, they may want to see your documentation, such as a spreadsheet or some other document where you counted your hours. And the second thing to note about the clinical hours for Pathway 1 is they do not need to be directly supervised. So note that we do have a program for those of you that are not already affiliated with a breastfeeding support organization. It's called the LER Hours Program. And this is for our certified breastfeeding specialists. So folks that have completed our 45 or a 95-hour program, or 52-hour or a 95-hour program, LCTP or CORE. These both offer you a way to gather those 1,000 hours in your community. Okay, so now we're going to move to Pathway 3. So as I mentioned before, that requires 500 hours of clinical experience, and that's best done in a busy practice setting where you can work with as many breastfeeding, chest feeding families, and those providing human milk to their babies. You can do this every day. Hospital setting, a clinical setting. These hours count towards your 500 only when you're actually working with families. The observation hours that you do not count towards those clinical hours. Now, remember that clinical experience is graduated, meaning it starts with observation. Then you'll do a few things under supervision, and then you're going to start to complete tasks independently with the IBCLC nearby, so you can ask questions, discuss the situation. And LER does have an internship program. We have many sites around the United States, and that's something we can help you with as well. So if that's something you're interested in, you can reach out to Julie, you can reach out to support@lactationtraining.com, and we can connect you with our clinical internship director. That's Amy Black, and she can help you determine if we have a site in your area. And if not, we can give you suggestions on how you can work with your local hospital or other similar setting to facilitate an internship site in your community. Now, one thing that Amy did want me to mention in this webinar is you can't start to count your hours towards the internship requirement until both you and the IBCLC are comfortable with you working independently. So most interns spend something like 75 hours or so in orientation before you begin to accrue the 500 hours towards your Pathway 2. Now, if you end up identifying someone independently, take a look in your community, try to find someone willing to host you as an intern. You may need to approach many people to find someone that has the time and the experience and the capacity to agree to be your mentor, but don't be discouraged. Keep at it because that is a very viable pathway for folks if you can find that option. Now, it's of course with that pathway very important to find a good fit. So while this pathway does have an extra step or two, some people say, is it worth it? And the answer really is yes. IBCLC reports that students that come through Pathway 3 seem to score really well on the exam. And it seems like it's the mentorship, right, that makes that key component. Learning from an experienced clinician can be well worth the extra effort that it takes to get set up at the beginning of this pathway. Now, a lot of people are asking whether or not they can accrue clinical hours via telehealth, and the quick answer is yes. The longer answer is available in IBCLC documents, so they will allow the use of technology as long as certain parameters are met. So always be sure to go back and check that source. Now, you're also going to need to pay attention to the privacy rules and the Code of Professional Conduct and Clinical Competency for IBCLCs. With LER, a part of our education, we have two ways to help you gather those hours. The first is our lactation consultant training program. You'll hear me call that LCTP, lactation consultant training program. That's the 95 hours that I've been mentioning. It's 95 hours from front to back. The other way to get those hours is the core course, which offers about 52 plus hours, or the bridge course, which is a way to move from a course where either our core course or another course where you've taken 45 or so hours and then bridge that to the IBCLC. They're designed to meet your educational needs depending on your background and your previous training. So LCTP, again, that's that 95-hour course. It's eligible for CME, it's eligible for nursing contact hours, and it's LARC approved. And this is intended for those who don't have lactation education and they know they want to be an IBCLC. Now, in that course, you'll find that we have more than 35 instructors. All of them are incredibly knowledgeable, experienced, amazing instructors who are practicing lactation consultants, researchers, advocates, authors who teach our courses. Sekeita happens to be one of them. I teach courses on occasion. And the classes that you'll find there are economical. You can view them on a variety of devices, your computer, your tablet, your phone. They're optimized for a computer, but you can review them later as need be when you're on the go. Now, we've been at this game for some time. There's a reason why our website is lactationtraining.com, right? We've been educating people both in person and online since 1990. And we've updated our course information with the latest peer-reviewed evidence on an incredibly regular schedule. We have a schedule that we do where we review every single course, but we also update sooner as new evidence emerges. So if a new piece of evidence comes out that means that we want to change one of the courses, we're not waiting for that schedule to come up. That's something that we're going to go ahead and change. And if you have questions for an instructor at any point, you can send an email to our support forum. And we have IBCLCs like Julie, who's on our call today, available to answer your questions. So after you've completed your 95 hours, you're also eligible to take our LER's Certified Breastfeeding Specialist exam. That exam is included in the price of both our 95 hours and our core course. Once you pass that, you are a certified breastfeeding specialist. And this is to recognize you for the level of education that you've attained. So with the certificate, you can begin to collect your clinical hours, either towards the IBCLC exam, again through our hours program. Now, if you're not sure where to start, or you already have some lactation education hours, then we also have the core program I mentioned, or our bridge programs to meet your needs. They have the same advantages of our LCTP course. Now, our original course is called core because it provides you with core lactation education. It gives you what you need to begin supporting the normal course of breastfeeding. Again, it's 52 plus hours. It covers the basics like anatomy and physiology, infant growth and development, supporting preterm babies, medication and breastfeeding, and a whole number of other topics. And as I mentioned, at the end of that course is the Certified Breastfeeding Specialist exam. Now, the bridge course is really ideal for those who have basic lactation education and they need an extra 45 hours to qualify for the IBCLC examination, or the commission examination. And topics in our bridge course include legal and ethical concerns for the lactation consultant, infant feeding and disasters, breastfeeding, learning about infants with medical challenges, case studies, clinical skills videos. So now, okay, so where should you start? Because we get a lot of these questions. If you are new to the profession, and are really wanting something more exploratory, we suggest our core course. Take that, see if it feels right. And if it feels right and you like the content and the way it's organized and the way we teach and train, then that can be a good opportunity to then move on to Bridge. Now, I know that all of these requirements can feel like a lot, but as I mentioned, we are here for you literally every step of the process. If you have questions about the pathways that don't get answered in our session here today, you can reach out to our customer support department. Again, IBCLCs, many of them, and they know the process inside and out. Our 3 different ways for you to earn your education are here depending on your goals and where you're at in the process. Yeah, now if you're not a healthcare professional working directly with families, getting those hours can feel like a big challenge. Again, we have the 2 programs to help you with those clinical hours, one for Pathway 1 and one for Pathway 3. And then of course, when you're ready to take the exam, we have you covered there as well. We offer 2 versions of our very popular exam prep course. We use something called LER QBank. It's a comprehensive system that includes practice exams, photo flashcards. Those photos are such an incredibly important part of the process, anatomy flashcards, a study schedule, and a lot more. If you take our 95-hour course, then there's a discount to take the exam review course. Now, our 90-hour course, as well as Core and Bridge, are also available in Spanish. On our Capacitación en Lactancia is our website. That provides the same high-quality education found on LER, on the LER side in English. It's also in Spanish. We also deeply believe that access to high quality lactation education should not be limited to those who live in countries with high incomes. We recognize that in many parts of the world, the relative purchasing power of local currency can make the cost of lactation education inaccessible. So as a part of our commitment to increasing access to lactation training worldwide, our pricing is adjusted according to the student's country of residence, and it's in alignment with the World Bank figures, so that helps set the fee. We also recognize that some of the greatest barriers to the field is access. So we have a number of community partners we work with. We have a number of different ways that LER works to try to increase access in the field. So I'm wondering here, let's see. So Sekeita, this has been incredibly fabulous to connect with everybody so far. I'm wondering if we should tackle a few questions.
Okay, let me open up the question panel. Let's see. Thank you, Jeanette, for providing that information. It was all good. And as usual, Julie is always on it. I don't know if I see any flagged questions so far, but let me see. Okay. There is a question, as a dietitian and working for WIC, what's the best pathway? I'm always hesitant to answer the best pathways for people. And, again, it depends on what your goals are. So I will say that the opportunities that you have already working with WIC, WIC is a breastfeeding support organization that's recognized. So pathway one would probably be the most easiest. I will say though, I am a big proponent of pathway three if you can, or if you do pathway, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, of getting extra clinical experience under your belt. And so probably pathway one, because you are already gaining your hours. Again, when we say best, that's a qualifying word that I'm like, okay, for me as a nurse, I'll give you an example. I was working in maternal child. I could have done pathway one, but I wanted to do pathway three. I wanted to get the sound clinical experience. I wanted to work outpatient lactation. I wanted to work inpatient lactation. I wanted to actually follow and get the clinical skills. There is some variances in the types of experiences we get based on where we're working at. And so when we say best, I think it just depends on whatever is best for you in your situation, I guess.
I think there's a great question here where someone says, how can I find out if my qualification allows for clinical hours on pathway one? So as Julie answered, it depends on where you work, a clinical setting or breastfeeding support organization. But in terms of which health credential that you have and whether or not that qualifies for pathway one, that is completely determined by the IBCLC Commission, and so you can find that information on their website. And things do change, so we're always happy to answer questions here, but we do want to note that it's really, really important to always go back to the source and check the IBCLC website. We track it closely, and when there's updates and changes, we put that out in our newsletter. But always go to the source.
Yeah. There's another question. I've worked in the NICU for the last 11 years. How many hours can I use towards my pathway? Given that working in the NICU is working with, our most fragile babies, right? Our most vulnerable babies. There is a calculator that, because we know that, most of the care that's delivered is not directly tied to supporting lactation. So there is a calculator based on the percentage of time that is spent on lactation. You can visit the website, IBCLC's website, and that can help you determine like what your hours are, and even what your role is. Like, so when you say I've worked in a NICU, if you worked in a NICU and been providing lactation support as a NICU person and you're the lead lactation area, then I would say, okay, you probably can count a lot, right? But if you've also been providing care to babies, then that's going to look a little different.
And I just wanted to shout out someone who raised the question. They said, it appears there are no IBCLCs in Mozambique, so unfortunately pathway 3 isn't an option. So first of all, I want to applaud you for your efforts to become an IBCLC. As we mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, there are IBCLCs in many countries, but not all countries in the United States, in the world. And that doesn't mean that you can't become an IBCLC. It means that you get to be the amazing first in your country. And so I just wanted to cheer you on in your work, because it is it's important everywhere. We need skilled lactation settings. We need skilled lactation providers in every setting around the world, and you are so needed and so important. And I'm so glad that you are gearing up to do this work.
Thank you, Jeanette. There is a flag question. Thank you for the information. 2 questions. I would like to provide this course as professional development for my home visitors that work with, my screen just went, that work with mothers and babies daily and will their home visits count toward their hours? And also, we are in the Virgin Islands. Do you have any partners here for the mentorship option 3? So I will say that we do work with community-centered organizations, and we provide that CBS certification. So for group rate, that is something that if you're interested in doing, you can email us if you want more information. And if they were to become CBSs, for example, and they did join the hours program, then absolutely their hours would count towards the exam. I hope that makes sense, right? And the second question is, do you have partners here for the mentorship option 3? Not to my knowledge, we don't have any Virgin Island partners. Jeanette, what about your thoughts? I don't think we do, but Jeanette is our world traveler, our international traveler. So, I'll leave that to Jeanette.
Yeah, here's what I would suggest. So I'm fairly certain that Virgin Islands are a territory, yeah? So I would reach out to Amy, who is our internship director, because this works in 2 ways, right? There are times when, if there's an interest, she can work on developing options in your community. And this can look lots of ways. She may have tried 10 times before in a certain area. We won't talk about your community, but just in any community in the United States. We can, there are some places where we've tried and we know we haven't had a lot of luck, but we can give you some advice on how to move forward. Or it can be a new opportunity that we haven't explored before. So definitely reach out to Amy, our internship director, who can help guide you on that.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for that, Jeanette. There's a question, are nurses required to do Pathway 1? No, nurses are not required to do Pathway 1. You can do Pathway 1 or Pathway 3. I am a nurse. I've been a nurse for almost 3 years. I can't believe it. But, and I've been working in maternal child since I've graduated. Fresh out of nursing school, I chose Pathway 3 for my own set of reasons and goals, but you are not required to do Pathway 1. Let's see, another question here. There's lots of thank yous, and thank you all for joining us. It always helps to have an engaged audience with all of these questions. It's like, okay. Let's see. I believe, what is the real difference between a CBS and an IBCLC? CBS has a scope of practice that only can manage uncomplicated lactation concerns. That is the scope of practice for the CBS. The IBCLC manages complicated, the normal through the complicated lactation issue. So, for example, when I talked about the level of acuity, there is an acuity model by Rebecca Mano that talks about the level of care that's necessary. So, for example, level 1, care can be provided by RNs, by anyone with basic lactation education, right? When I say basic, I mean the basics in latch and positioning, the basics in knowing whether a baby is transferring milk and transferring milk effectively, right? Those are all like low, uncomplicated things. The point where it becomes, whoa, this baby is not transferring effectively, that becomes a case for an IBCLC, if that makes sense. So it's the IBCLC, it takes that baby up another risk factor. It makes that baby have a higher acuity, so to speak, which means they need a higher level of care or more specific care, or specialized care, however you want to say it. But there is a difference between the two. And the credentialing bodies is different. The IBCLC is an international standalone credential. The CBS is our trademark certification.
And for those of you that are healthcare providers, when you hear Sekeita say scope of practice, you know exactly what she means. For those of you who are coming at this from a parent-to-parent support group or peer educator, I came to this work through parent-to-parent support. Scope of practice is defined. Is defined by the certificate that you hold or by your profession. The IBCLC has a very clear written scope of practice. You can go find it. And the CBS has a written scope of practice. You can go find both of those on our website. We provide them side by side so that you can take a look exactly at the difference between the two and the kinds of cases that you could manage with each of those.
Right. And to add to that, the scope of practice is, for example, you can get in trouble if you act outside of your scope of practice. So for me, as well, I can use this now. I can't, well, before I became a nurse practitioner, for example, that was one of the things why I wanted to become a nurse practitioner, because I could see mastitis all day long. And as an RN, be like, this is mastitis, but I couldn't say that it was mastitis because I would be diagnosing. That is out of my scope of practice. I would be practicing medicine if I were to do that. However, as a nurse practitioner, it is within my scope of practice now to be able to diagnose such things. And I hope that kind of makes sense. They're governed by whatever your license determines, or your certification or credentials determines your scope of practice is. Let's see. CERPs need to, so apologies if I already answered. Do my CERP need to be complete by application? Meaning, can I begin? No, your CERPs have to be done before you can submit your application.
Yes, every step must be complete before you complete your application. I'll give you a very quick story, which is that when you were talking about CPR, a colleague and I completed our CPR course and then literally went and sat down to reapply. One of us was audited, one of us wasn't. The CPR agency issued our certificates the next day. And when she was audited, it was actually a problem. Like, we had to go back. She had to go back and demonstrate, get a letter from the CPR organization demonstrating. So they are looking at the timestamp of when you put in your application.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that this, Julie, has been fabulous in answering the majority of the questions. So yay, and shout out to Jill as well, our technical assistants. So just remember that we have tech support 7 days a week. Get your answered questions, get your questions answered. This is a midday, right? Okay. And we are here for you on your step, on every step of the way. We want you to succeed. We want to help you along your journey. So, thank you again for joining us. And if you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out.
And thank you all so much. And Sekeita, thank you today for jumping in. Huge help.
No, this is why we call it real talk, right? Things happen in real life. So
Exactly.
there it is.
Exactly.
This is an example of real life, real talk, right?
Exactly. Sekeita's here for you always.
Enjoy the rest of you all's day. And again, good luck and best wishes on your journey. Have a good evening.
Everybody.
Bye-bye.